So in this video I want to talk about writing your literature review chapter. But importantly, what I will be talking about can be applied to any other chapter or any other kind of written assignment. So it doesn't have to be a master's dissertation, it can be a PhD thesis, it can be an academic article or any kind of written academic assignment. The point is how to write it, how to get from 0 words to, let's say, 5 or 5,000 words or 15,000 or 70,000 words. How to do that, because this is the most frustrating part. So the two aspects of writing that chapter that I want to discuss is firstly how to structure it, and then secondly how to actually write it. How to structure it is very important in light of the strategy that I will later share for how to write it. And this is a strategy that I have been using throughout my throughout different stages of my education, and then throughout different stages of my career in general. So firstly, let's talk about the structure. I know there are many guidelines for how to structure your literature review chapter, many guidelines online, and usually they focus on different approaches to how to review your literature or how to present your literature. So they may mention reviewing it by chronological order or by themes, certain themes in the literature. But this is not what I want to discuss. I want to focus generally on how to, what kind of structure to focus on. And as I said, this will be important for our strategy that I will be discussing later on. So the general structure I believe should be going from the broad, from the very general to the very specific. So that's like the most general rule. So now let's imagine you are writing, you're planning to write a dissertation on using authentic materials for teaching reading skills to English language students in China. So basically authentic materials are whatever is considered a real material, like a newspaper, a book, a leaflet, or whatever. Authentic materials have not been designed to for the purpose of teaching the language. This is the general definition of authentic materials. And again, you are planning to write about that and using these materials to teach reading in English language classrooms in China. So the general rule is to start with general. In our case, the most general concept among these different concepts that we're going to write about is probably teaching reading in general. So I would imagine that apart from introduction, of course, your literature review would probably start with discussing teaching reading to English language learners. Why is it important to teach reading? And then probably what you want to share, particularly because you are going to talk about authentic materials, using authentic materials, which is like an approach. So you probably want to talk about different approaches to teaching reading. How do we teach reading? So basically imagine that your reader doesn't know anything about your topic. This is another rule that you have to follow. So you have to explain everything. Why is it important to teach reading, and then how do we teach reading? And then if you want to, since you want to focus on the use of authentic materials, you probably want to introduce the topic of authentic materials. So of course define them, and then why are they useful, why are they a valuable resource for teaching English. But of course don't forget to mention possible limitations, because as you know, in academia it's very important to be critical and to at least acknowledge the other part of the discussion. So to acknowledge the criticism and possible disadvantages or challenges of using authentic material in our case. And then, since your study is about the Chinese context, of course you have to discuss this Chinese context. So you're going, as I said, from the general, from teaching reading skills or teaching English through reading. Then you go through your authentic materials and different approaches to teaching reading. where it should become evident why using authentic materials is in fact a valuable approach. And then you want to start describing the context of this study. So if I'm the reader who knows nothing again about any of the topics or concepts in your dissertation, I need to understand this context that you'll be investigating. So if you believe that it's important to introduce this kind of teaching in the Chinese context, I need to know what is currently being taught, how is the language currently being taught in China. Another tip for you, and this is also something that I have been mentioning quite a lot in other videos, is that the general purpose of your literature review chapter is that when the reader finishes reading that chapter and before he or she gets to reading your methods chapter, so the one where you actually list your research questions and what you're planning to do, the reader before getting to that chapter should kind of already understand what your study will be about anyway. So as I'm reading through your chapter, through your structure and how you focus from this general to specific, I'm kind of developing this idea, okay, so he will probably or she will probably talk about introducing authentic materials in China, because I've read about reading skills, how to teach reading skills. I've read about authentic materials, and now I know about the Chinese context. So that's the purpose. That's another purpose of this chapter. It should become almost common sense that to me, that I know what you're planning to investigate by the time I get to the end of your chapter. So as I said, at the end you want to discuss this Chinese context. I need to know about this context and how the language is currently being taught, and then whether there is any research on teaching reading and whether authentic materials are used in this context at the moment. So now that you know more or less what the structure of your literature review should be, very general structure of course, let's move on to the strategies that I want to teach you. So how to actually write that chapter. So generally I know this feeling and I know how frustrating it is to start with nothing. You're expected to write, as I said, let's stick to the dissertation example, to write somewhere between 13 and 15,000 words and probably about 5,000 or 7,000 words for your literature review chapter, and yet you have nothing. And I know how frustrating it is and how difficult it is to start writing. And I think that one of problems, one of mistakes also that students often make, and I've made that mistake plenty of times, is to simply gather your material. So obviously you have done, I'm assuming you have done all the reading that you think is relevant to your work. But now, even though you've read all these things, all these sources, it doesn't mean that it's easy for you to simply put that on paper and write that chapter. And I think the mistake is to just open that Microsoft Word document and just try to start writing, and then just see how you get along. So, and this is, it may sound like a good idea because it's always better to start than just to sit there and get frustrated. And I agree with that, with this active approach. But I think it also may discourage you because you have read so many materials, you have so much knowledge, and then it's just confusing. You don't really know where to discuss what. And this can be extremely demotivating. So instead what I do, and I think I discussed this before when I talked in general about writer's block and how to overcome this writer's block, what I like to do is to put some initial structure into that document. So this is what I always do. As I said, I always do it, and it's an extremely effective method. So let's assume that I have this empty Word document, and what I'll do first again is to start with general and go to specific, just like the structure that I just discussed. So what I'll do first, I'll just put all these headings in my empty Word document. These headings will be my chapters. So I'll put the literature review, methodology, findings, headings, and all the headings that I'll I'll end up having in my dissertation anyway. So this is where I start, and then so now let's focus on the literature review. So under the literature review heading, what I want to do next is to introduce subheadings, so all the sections that I will put in this chapter. And the order of these subheadings will generally reflect the structure that I just discussed. So going from general to specific. So in our example, this would probably start with a section on teaching reading skills in general, why it's important and all that stuff. And if you don't really know yet, or you haven't decided yet what order you will have, what order of these sections you'll have, that's where and when you start thinking about it. So you may just start with simple bullet points, or you may even write a little paragraph, a short paragraph in which you try to reflect on this topic and just see how try to develop a logical order for how to introduce this topic. Try to imagine that you're talking to somebody who has no idea about this topic and no idea about your study, and just think how you would start introducing that topic to that person. So and then just put it, try to reflect what you just said or thought or wrote. Try to reflect that in that structure. So so again, start with these subheadings. So teaching reading skills, for example, and then authentic materials, and then perhaps Chinese ELT, which is English language teaching context. So you have these three general sections, and then the next stage is to, of course, break these sections down into a number of subsections and, you know, smaller sections. So perhaps if your section 1 in chapter 1 is about reading skills, and section 2 is about different methods used for teaching reading skills, then subsection 2.1 would probably be about authentic materials or any other methods, and then perhaps subsection 2 or whatever. I actually forgot the order of subsections, but subsection of your authentic materials would be probably advantages of using that kind of material. Another subsection would be disadvantages. So basically try to break the whole topic into a number of smaller topics and smaller sections. So then your final section on ELT in China could start with subsection which is overview of ELT in China. The next subsection could be about teaching reading skills in China, and so on and so forth. So basically this is what I do. So of course these sections at the moment are all empty, but at least you're developing this clear structure that will really guide you and really help you to write that chapter. The next thing that I usually do is to try to put some kind of content into each section and into each subsection. And I'm not talking about the actual content and writing just yet, but more like some general ideas and observations. So in each section or subsection you may just summarize in 1 or 2 sentences what you are planning to put in that section or in that subsection. And another thing that I do is, if I have read different materials on this topic, and I'm assuming again that you have, you just may be a little bit confused as to how to structure that chapter. What I like to do is to put references to these different articles in these different sections and subsections. So if I have a subsection on the advantages of using authentic materials, and I have that great article about advantages of authentic materials, I'll just put whatever the author's name, so let's say Martin and Robinson 2001, in my notes in that section, just so that I remember that I have this article and I probably want to talk about this article in that section. And I just continue and repeat that process. So if I have a number of different articles or a number of different references, I like to at least put some of them into these different sections, because later on, as I'll be writing, I don't really want to go through all these sources again and try to find what's relevant for this section, because this will again disrupt this nice and smooth process of writing. And the whole point of this strategy is to prepare, make all the do all the preparations that you will need later on for just continuous writing. So you don't really want to be disturbed, you don't really want to be focusing on finding these articles or thinking about what you need to write and what you need to write next. So this is why we need this structure, and this is why we need this these notes in each section. And now finally, the last thing I do, and this is absolutely crucial, is to try to indicate how many words will be in each section, how many words you have to write for each section. So let's imagine that you have a total of 10 subsections and sections, and you need to write 5,000 words in total. This is a simple example, but as I'm not very good at maths, I'm just gonna use it because it's very easy to calculate. So you have 10 sections, you need to write 5,000 words. So you need to write more or less 500 words for each section. Of course it will differ. If you believe something requires a little bit more discussion, it may be 700 words, or if you need to write less, it can be 300 or 400. But usually the sections tend to be relatively similar in length, not exactly, but relatively similar. So it's not very common to have a section that has 50 words and then a section that has 2,000 words. Usually they are more or less similar. So this is what you want to do now. So now you have this structure. Now you've indicated how many words, so the word count for each section, and you have 500 here, 500 here, and you know exactly how much you need to write for each section. And this is really the end of this preparation stage, because the next thing you will do is start writing. By the way, I hope you're enjoying this video so far. If you feel like you're getting value out of this video or you're learning something new and useful, consider subscribing to this channel and liking the video. So as I said, now we are in the final stage. You have a clear structure. You know exactly how many words you need to write for each of these sections. So all you need to do now is to plan ahead. So you have 500 words to write for each section. So let's imagine you can do that in 1 day or 2 days. So you will know probably how much you can write in a day. So let's say it's 500 words. So now you know that in theory, of course, you need 10 days to write that, because each day you will be writing 500 words, and you have this structure, so you don't need to waste any more time thinking about what you'll be writing about next. Now you know how much you need to write for each section, and also you have some general notes and some general initial observations, because you have made these notes at the beginning. So like I said, in theory it should take you about 10 days, but let's even add 5 days to that, because of course there will be some challenges. Of course sometimes it will take you longer, or sometimes you'll decide to restructure something, or even read another article, so you may need some extra time. So add 5 days to that. So even with these 5 additional days, it's you still have 15 days to write the whole literature review chapter. And the best thing about it is that every day you know what your goal is. You know you need to write 500 words. So you're working towards that goal. It's easier to feel motivated to work because you know how much left you've got, and also it's easier to know when to stop, and that's very important. So whenever you have written these 500 words, you may make some basic notes for the next section, for the next day, and just call it a day. So the next day you just sit down in front of your laptop again and just write 500 words. I hope you agree that having this kind of structure and having this kind of a goal is much more encouraging than simply thinking about 5,000 words, about having to write 5,000 words and simply just trying to dive in there and just write it, when you don't really know what to write, when to write, how much to write, or when to stop. Thank you again for watching this video. If you have any questions or any concerns about writing your literature review chapter or writing your dissertation in general or any other paper, feel free to post these concerns in the comments, and I will try to respond. I'll try to give you advice whenever possible.